Thank you, Kareem, and thank you, Mustafa. So Egypt is just not all about pyramids and Mohammed Salah, it's also about the Egyptian hospitality. But that now brings us to our next section, which is a panel discussion on Egypt as a market of growth and opportunity. I would like the panel members to come onto the stage while I introduce them. Joining the panel are Mustafa Saad, Business Development Manager from Arab Contractors. Mustafa has been with the Arab Contractors since 2009 and is one of the first engineers in Egypt to be certified for International Certificate for Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy, and is also one of the founders of the Arab Contractors General Energy Conservation Committee. Next up is Imran Qazi, Regional Sales Manager for Middle East and East Africa for PowerScreen. He's been associated with the crushing, screening, and earth-moving machinery business at different levels with dealerships in India and the Middle East before joining PowerScreen. And then we have Ahmed El-Sharkawi, partner Sharkawi in Sirhan Law. He co-founded the law firm, and Ahmed has worked as an in-house counsel for some of the biggest industrial groups and as the country legal counsel for Citigroup in Egypt as well. He has an LLM in international banking and financial laws from Boston University. And of course, we have Liz McCrory, UKEF manager for Northern Ireland. Liz uses her experience and skills to enable Northern Ireland exporters to identify, quantify, manage, and minimize the financial risks of exporting. The panel will be moderated by Raksha Maharaj, our Regional Director for Africa for Invest Northern Ireland. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us here today. As Swati has mentioned, my name is Raksha Maharaj. I'm the Regional Director for Africa at Invest Northern Ireland. I've worked in market and business development on the continent for the last 20 years, and there's never been a more exciting time to look at Africa than over the last 5 or 6 years. Pre-COVID, some of the world's fastest growing economies were found in Africa. Business and opportunities were booming, and key amongst that was the Egyptian market, where growth was averaging around 7%. We've heard from colleagues earlier that growth is expected to slow this year to about 4.5%, and this is as a result of COVID-related factors. The good news is that this is expected to have a limited impact, and the World Bank is predicting a recovery as early as next year. Doing business in Egypt is a huge opportunity, but as with most opportunities, comes with certain challenges. These, I think, can be mitigated if you take the time to understand the market and develop the correct approach. We're very fortunate to be joined today by our panel members who have all worked in Egypt, who have lots of knowledge and experience that they will share with us in understanding the market, navigating the challenges, and maximizing the opportunities. Thank you to the panel for joining us today. I'll ask each of you to take about a minute to introduce yourself and your company. Thanks. Mustafa, can we start with you?
First of all, many thanks for inviting us, the Arab Contractors team, to join this meetings and this esteemed conference. The Arab Contractors, as my colleague Kareem presented our company presentation, one of the leading construction companies in the Middle East and Africa, and I'm honored to be responsible for the business development department for overall the company in Egypt and in Africa.
Thank you, Mustafa. Thank you, Raksha, for having me here. It's a pleasure to talk to you guys. My name is Imran Qazi. I'm the Regional Sales Manager for PowerScreen, based out of our Dubai office, handling the Middle East and East Africa. PowerScreen, for some of you know or you don't know, it is a manufacturer or a global leader in manufacturing of mobile crushing, screening, and conveying equipment based out of Dungannon near Cookstown. We have been in business for over 50 years. conceptualized in 1969 as Ulster plant and then acquired by Terex as a corporation in the year 1999. Yeah, so we look forward to talking to you, and I think a lot has been spoken about Egypt and expectations are high.
Ahmed Sharkawi. I'm a partner at Sharkawi and Sarhan Law Firm. We are a full-service law firm. We have been operating for the last 17 years in Egypt, advising businesses on different sectors from mining, oil and gas, infrastructure to day-to-day employment and general corporate and commercial.
Good morning, everyone. Liz McCrory. I'm UK Export Finance Manager for Northern Ireland. UK Export Finance is the UK's export credit agency. We're a government department, the oldest export credit agency in the world. We were formed over 100 years ago. Our aim and our mission is to make sure that no viable export contract fails for the want of the right type of finance or protection against not being paid. Last year, we provided over £7.8 billion in support of UK exports. And we have a real appetite to do business in Egypt. We have capability to do up to £2 billion.
Thanks. So I'll start off now with a round of questions for the panelists that's designed to give you a little bit of insight about how they work and how to access the market. Mustafa, I'll start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about how Arab Contractors engages with companies in the supply chain, and what are the key areas for you from a supply chain perspective?
Whether in Egypt, in the Middle East, in Africa, where is the countries which we are involved in business and construction activities there, most probably our technical and tendering procurement teams always need to receive a quotation from the different local and international suppliers, manufacturers, to receive quotation for the many different items included in the project, construction materials and equipment, operating systems like the monorail projects, which including needed materials, equipment, operating systems, and so on. So most properly, we are dealing with the most international suppliers at these fields, in particular the UK suppliers, which we would like to expand this vendor list with additional Northern Ireland suppliers for materials, equipment, and operating systems, and so on. This is the first track, is the tendering process. During the tendering process, when we need to receive quotation from the different suppliers. The second track is during the dealing with the projects under EPC plus finance in Egypt or in Africa, as it's the trend for many construction projects now announced by our clients under EPC plus finance. So we deal with different ECAs. One of the top of them, the UKF. We already dealt in Tanzania for the time being for 3 huge mega projects for infrastructure and roads under the support of the UKF. So they providing to us the guarantees to the client to provide the required finance for the project in return of supplying the materials and the project's items from the UK companies. So this is the 2 tracks which we are dealing with the UK and or Northern Ireland suppliers within under the tendering process or within the contracts under EPC plus F with the UK ECA. For the main project or activities that we are we are focusing on in Egypt or in Africa, most of the projects that we are involved in under transportation sector, infrastructure, water projects, energy projects. So we need to expand our vendor list with a lot of Northern Ireland and UK suppliers for solar projects, items, transportation, infrastructure, especially roads, as most of, maybe you can consider that 70–80% of our as Arab contractors projects in Africa, road projects. So it could include road construction materials and equipments and so on.
Thank you. Imran, can you tell us about why PowerScreen decided to look at Egypt as a market to enter, and what are some of the key sectors or areas that you are targeting in the market?
Yeah, sure. I mean, a lot has been already summarized through the detailed presentations given by Arab contractor Anissa and Alistair Long. But if you have to, you know, sort of look at the crux, these are two things. Like, it's a country blessed with rich demographic dividend and a very strong geostrategic location. So where we are today with Egypt, and as rightly we saw in one of the presentation, we are probably supposed to be there about a decade back. But nevertheless, we are there. I mean, if you look at why PowerScreen is getting into Egypt, it's a very important market. It's a growing market. We have been following Egypt for the last 4 or 5 years and patiently waiting for things to turn around, and finally we are seeing good positive vibes, really constructive positive vibes down the line happening, seeing things taking shape. If you look at Egyptian government spending, which has increased by 15%, and about $106 billion are going to be spent on various projects, including power, water, oil and gas, buildings and infrastructure. And the majority of this chunk is going to get into buildings and infrastructure, which is our bread and butter. So when there is construction happening in any market, there's a player, there's a place that we need to be. That is one of the segments that we are looking at. We are looking at the mining segment, which is on the verge of, getting its due share. If you look at the Arabian-Nubian Shield, which is blessed with, deposits like gold, zinc, copper, so many other base metals, which was supposed to be explored long back, but because of some archaic mining laws, which were revamped back in 2014 and now again in 2020, it has come to a stage wherein the investors are finding it lucrative to get into the mining business into Egypt, because earlier they felt that there was not enough ROIs for them to invest, but now things are changing. So once mining and infra activities in any market is going to happen, our products would be required, and anybody in our segment working in manufacturing of our or similar equipments, crushing, screening, conveying, washing, they ought to be there. I mean, you just cannot simply ignore the market. Yeah, that's it.
That's a great thought, a market that you cannot ignore. Ahmed, can you tell us a little bit about the Egyptian business environment from a legal perspective? How easy is it for international companies to do business in Egypt?
Sure. So basically, I think we need to differentiate between two types of or two ways of entering the Egyptian market. One is simply exporting to the market, and the other is basically having presence in the market. Traditionally, exporting to the market was not a problem. There would normally be a little bit of bureaucracy with the customs authority, but if you have the right local partner and you have the right business structure, it shouldn't have been a problem. Recently, the main issue would be the currency shortage, because of course, it's unless you are dealing with a project that secured foreign currency funds, it might be difficult for the Egyptian partner to secure the foreign currency, and this is gonna be an issue for some time. The government declared that it will not get engaged in new mega projects that involves foreign currency for the time being, until the country recovers from the currency shortage that it has now. On the other side, if you want to set up a business in Egypt, which I honestly think now could be a very good time if you take a long-term view because of the strategic location of Egypt and because of the 100 million people, especially if you are looking at food and beverage or any sector that would rely on the big population that we have. I think incorporating a company is fairly straightforward and easy. Usually the challenges would be in getting the right licenses. The government responded to this by having something called the golden license. If you invest in certain sectors, you get a license from the Prime Minister that would allow you to pretty much be authorized to do all your business without interacting with too many government entities. It is still new, but some companies have already obtained it, and I think currently the government is in the mood of really encouraging investment, whether it's the head of GAFI or even the Prime Minister and even sometimes the President. They are very much supportive to new investments, and they are willing to provide any and all potential privileges allowed under the law currently.
Thanks. Liz, Egypt has been a key market in Africa where UKEF has been deployed. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the projects that were financed and some of the amounts that projects were financed for?
We incentivize overseas buyers to look to the UK to buy products and services, and therefore we back the big projects. And we're particularly active in Egypt at the moment, and we backed the Cairo monorail project, and that was a project worth over 5 billion, 4 to 5 billion euro, and our support went into Bombardier Transportation, 1.87 billion pounds the government put into this project, and it was all to encourage UK suppliers and get the UK suppliers into the chain. And as Mohammed has said, you know, it's very important that Northern Ireland exporters are aware of these projects. They're aware of UK support going into the project. You know, at the very minimum, we would want 20% UK content going into such projects, but we're really pushing to get that UK content up. And it's a fantastic opportunity to have Arab Construction with us here today, because, you know, they can, you know, let you know what they're trying to procure and get you into the supply chain. And that's incredible. So please come along and talk to the guys from Arab Constructors if you want to get into their supply chain on this project and many others. We've also supported a project. We support Egypt Air. We have put in £30 million into that project, and that's really good. It's good for UK exports, but it's fantastic for Northern Ireland because the composite wings are made in Spirit, which is just down the road here in Belfast. So we're delighted about that. We are looking at other projects at the moment. Ahmed said about the situation in relation to foreign currency in Egypt, and that's one thing that Mohammed and I talked about before the presentation. If we are backing a project in Egypt, we can actually fund that in Egyptian pounds, which absolutely takes away the whole foreign exchange situation. You know, we bear the foreign exchange risk and any currency situations that might arise because of that. So it's something to bear in mind for buyers and exporters alike. We are looking at a number of projects in the private sector. We're looking at water desalination projects, and we're also looking at green energy projects, and that is high on our agenda as well. And I also know that there's other waste projects going on within Egypt, and these are projects that we hope to be able to support Northern Ireland exporters with. So, thank you.
Great, thanks, Liz. And it's the exact same sectors mentioned by Alistair and Anissa. So great to see that all the different parts of UK government are on the same page about what our focus should be. Mustafa, can you tell us a little bit about the procurement process for Arab contractors? Do you have something like a selection or registration process for companies that are interested in working with you?
For the procurement process, yes, we have our procurement sector, our central procurement sector in Egypt, who is responsible for the registration process for all the suppliers, manufacturers, and partners for the supply chain, for the procurement all over our projects in Egypt. Yes, the registration process, procedures and forms, we already arranged for these forms and the procedures to be provided to all the interested Northern Ireland suppliers, because it's a systematic process to be fulfilled. One of the main requirements for each company to have a representative or an agent in the local market in Egypt for the after-sales services and dealing during the contracting, during the tendering process after receiving the request for quotation. And we are happy to provide these registration procedures and forms to all the interested companies. This is for Egypt, but for the overseas projects, our projects in Africa, North and East and West Africa, in the African countries, most probably the procurement process going through a direct contact with the managing director of our branch in Africa or in the Middle East, in coordination with our department as a business development. So we are happy to receive any requests from the interested Northern Ireland companies to be added for our vendor list.
Thanks very much. Imran, you cover Middle East and Africa. Did you find that there were some similarities, perhaps cultural or otherwise, that made the transition from working in the Middle East to Egypt a little bit easier for you?
Oh, yeah, certainly. I mean, if you look at Middle East and Egypt, there's a lot of commonalities in language, food, people interaction, companies working across these regions. So companies like Arab Contractors, CCC and others, they have a footprint across Egypt and the Middle East. So as far as entering the market is concerned, we work on a dealership model. So we are not yet there at a stage where we go and set up a manufacturing unit. So it's more about setting up a dealership, which is not that cumbersome. It's about a viable business option for both the parties. Yes, for companies who have worked with us in the Middle East, and fortunately we have a very, very strong presence in Middle East, very high market share. People know the brand PowerScreen. So those companies who have seen PowerScreen in the Middle East are really comfortable going ahead with the PowerScreen brand in Egypt as well. So yeah, I mean, this is definitely a positive side of having a strong position in the Middle East market.
Thanks, Imran. Ahmed, can you tell us, you've mentioned you've dealt with international clients. What is the biggest preconceived notion that you've come across when dealing with international clients?
I think, generally speaking, on the positive side, that typically Egypt would be one of their best performing companies. I think recently the main topic that was kind of worrying the investment community was the involvement of the government or government-owned entities in the economy. And this was actually one of the demands made by the World Bank to give Egypt or grant Egypt the latest loan. Egypt responded by what we call a state ownership document, which basically means that it was a public policy document published by the President's office, basically declaring Egypt's strategy toward three categories: Category 1 would be sectors that the government is committed to completely withdraw during the coming 5 years. The category 2 would be sectors that the government will freeze its investments and it will not make any additional investments during the coming 5 years. And category 3 would be sectors that the government will increase its investments, but this would be limited to basically defense, industry, and education. And as an implementation of this, the government recently offered or is preparing to offer 24 public-owned companies that will either offered as an IPO for the public or a majority stake for a strategic investor. And these are very good, profitable companies. So also those, I think, could represent an investment opportunity if one of them is in a sector that you are involved in. I think it would be good to look at them.
Thanks very much. Liz, we've heard a little bit about how UKEF is a key tool for opening new markets for UK and certainly for Northern Ireland companies. Can you tell us a little bit about, what support is there from UK Export Finance for supporting smaller exporters from Northern Ireland? And how can they learn more about this and access that support?
Well, UK Export Finance are committed to supporting UK exporters, and we do this in a number of ways. Well, first of all, we've talked about financing overseas projects and getting UK and Northern Ireland exporters into that supply chain. So we help them win contracts, but very importantly, we help Northern Ireland exporters access the finance that they need to deliver these contracts. And how we do this is we issue government guarantees to back working capital. So recently, over the last year, we introduced our General Export Facility, and this facility has been a real game changer for businesses in the UK and businesses in Northern Ireland. We delegated authority to the UK's top 5 banks, and they can automatically draw down a UKEF guarantee to back expansion, business growth, UK-linked projects, whatever an exporting business needs to grow that business here and overseas. To be eligible for the General Export Facility, 5% of a company's turnover, export turnover, they must have 5% in the last 3 years or 20% export turnover in one of the last 3 years. So if you have that and you are defined as an exporting business, we can support you in your working capital requirements. That can be used in terms of contract bonds. And if you're dealing with the like of Egypt, a lot of contract bonds come into play. You'll probably need to raise advance payment bonds. You'll probably need to raise performance bonds. So a company having to cash back those bonds, it leaves them very restricted. And sometimes they walk away from deals that they want to do because they do not want to tie up their working capital. We will back up to 80% of any facility offered by participating banks. So that's our working capital offering, giving exporters the money to do more deals overseas and maybe take on bigger deals. But we also support businesses' insurance needs. So if you are exporting to Egypt, if you want to make sure that you're going to get paid, perhaps you want that covered by an export insurance policy. We are on cover for Egypt with no predetermined security requirements. So that is the way that we are currently helping businesses in Northern Ireland. And over this last 12 months, we've been very successful with our new product with Jeff backing the working capital, as well as in Egypt, we've issued at least 10 policies.
Great, thanks, Liz. So some of the key points I've picked up from the speeches and the discussion we've just had is understanding the market, understanding your customer, as well as your potential partners, and I think very importantly, understanding the legal and regulatory framework, as well as the business environment. I think that in any new market, and especially on a continent as diverse as Africa, it's really important to understand the local business culture, to understand the people that you are engaging with, and to tailor your strategy accordingly. Importantly, as we've just heard from Liz, be aware of all the support that is available to you. Liz has spoken about UK Export Finance, and Invest NI is also positioned to help you to understand and navigate new markets. One of the words that I've picked up a lot on this morning is opportunity. I think it's how all of us here would describe Egypt. But it also brought to my mind two African proverbs that I think are quite apt. The first is, opportunities do not come to the sleeping man. And the second is, prepare today for the opportunities of tomorrow. So my closing message to everybody would be, come and talk to us today, engage with our speakers and our panelists, and start the process of exploring the Egyptian market. Thank you to the panelists. I'd like to now open up to questions from the audience. We have somebody with the roving microphone. Please put up your hand so we can take your question.
Hi, Raksha. I suppose it's a general question and maybe more for yourselves, Raksha. There's a lot of information has passed over today, and a lot of it, I suppose, I'm aware of some of it, but a lot of it was revealing to me. In terms of ongoing support within the Egyptian market, in our attempts to break into the Egyptian market, where is the best place to start seeking that information and advice? What would you recommend we start with? Is it in your office, Raksha, or where should we go about that?
Yes, so I would say, we have my colleague Sameh, who is based in Egypt. He would probably be the best place to start. I am based in South Africa, so also able to give some support. We have a really great working relationship with our colleagues from the Department for Business and Trade. So based at the British Embassy in Cairo, we work together very closely. And we're also very fortunate to be joined today by Philip O'Neill, who is the UK Regions Director for DBT. Invest NI works very closely. We are a small office in Africa, so we work closely with our colleagues at DBT in Egypt and across the continent, and also with our colleagues at UKEF. But I would say as a first step for Northern Ireland companies, reach out either to the ITAs here in Belfast, who will link you with us, or you're free to reach out to us directly. Claire?
Thank you very much. Firstly, thank you, panel, for an excellent presentation this morning, very informative. I suppose just extending beyond that question, obviously we're going through a period of transition in Invest Northern Ireland at the moment, and we're all aware of that. In my experience, trade missions into the territory are very beneficial in the sense that obviously you get boots on the ground, you can get to see the local families and organisations that perhaps could potentially partner with you. Is there a time frame? I suppose this is addressed to perhaps maybe someone from Invest Northern Ireland, but is there a time frame that we could perhaps schedule into our diaries for potential in-territory visits? And if not, perhaps is there an opportunity to avail of the Department of International Trade internal visits until such time as Invest Northern Ireland can support those?
Thanks, that's a great question. And I think Invest NI, working in Africa with 53 markets to cover, a key thing for us is to build partnerships. So with the Department for Business and Trade, but we also have really good relationships with business chambers, so the British Egyptian Business Association in Egypt, and then the Egyptian British Business Council, which is in London. They're actually running a trade mission to Egypt next week, but we got very short notice of it. However, they do these type of trade missions quite regularly. We will look to keep people informed, especially seeing as we got a good turnout today. We'll make sure we keep businesses and colleagues informed of this. And we also try to plan our visits to different markets around big events, where you can maximize the opportunity to build your network in the market. So yes, certainly we'd like to see a trade mission, particularly with companies from Northern Ireland going to Egypt soon. Yes, Anissa, please go ahead.
Hi, good question, and it is incredibly short notice, but if you are interested in that trade mission that's happening later in March, come and speak to me after this. We can still add a few people on. Thank you.
Thanks. Claire, we have one on that side.
Hi guys, thanks very much for your input today. So my name's Jason Beattie from Kinsetsu. We're a small IoT company from Belfast. So we're only going 6 years, but we have a big presence in healthcare and MOD. Now, Mustafa kindly said in his procedures for our contractors that we would still necessarily need a local representation in Egypt. Now, for SMEs, that's not necessarily a viable option just yet. Is that a typical for all government agencies, that you would need some type of a local presence, or is there a route for UK SMEs to go direct to defence or to healthcare in Egypt, for example?
For the registration procedures, it's very few steps to be registered in our vendor list. Just you be registered. The second step that you to initiate a representative office or deal with a distributor or agent for your company in Egypt. For the healthcare and medical projects, we already engage in many projects at this field, so we will be pleasure to receive your registration information to be registered to deal for to be engaged in such a project.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. If I just can add quickly, I think there is a legal requirement for all government entities that you don't necessarily have to be present, but at least you will have to appoint an agent at the very least.
Yeah, thanks. And obviously, from my background working with other companies, we've worked with agents in Egypt, and there is that sort of risk that you lose track of the pricing. You don't know, and you're not privy to what they're putting on at their side, and suddenly, oh, that company's just too expensive, that Northern Irish company. So, there is a risk for SMEs that we lose track of that, and that would be good if there was sort of assistance or help to maintain the integrity of that chain. Thank you.
I think we have time for a couple more questions. Do we have anyone?
I want to ask the Egyptians another question about the actual environment that's out there at the minute, the economic environment, because obviously CC has changed things remarkably positively in some respects, but not so positively in other respects. So how do you see the future going, not only with the IPOs that are happening, but also with regards to the currency, what's happening to it at the minute? And
I think that's a difficult question. I think, to be honest, if you look at the whole world, it's all in transition. So there are so many uncertainty, to be honest, and I think it's very difficult at this stage for anyone to predict anything. However, I always think that this is not the first time we see this. It's almost like a cycle. In 2016, we have seen this. In 2003, we have seen this. So anything between 5 to 10 years, we get into currency shortage and devaluation and getting into the World Bank program and so on. So if someone is taking a long-term view, again, I think Egypt will always be a good opportunity. If someone just wants like hit and run thing, definitely now is a volatile time for all countries and for the whole world.
Thanks. A final question from anyone?
Thank you very much. I'm Jackie McCoy from Ulster University. I'm delighted to say that Invest Northern Ireland were instrumental in brokering a very, very good deal for us in the Qatari market. And we are now looking to Egypt as a major exporter of education. So we will be in touch, and I just wanted to say hi and say we look forward to working with you. It has been excellent working with Invest up to now.
Great, thank you for that. And I think, as Anissa would agree, we're seeing a lot of interest from Egypt in education offerings from the UK, from Northern Ireland as well. So that's definitely a segment for us to build on. I would like to thank the panel for your time, for your participation today, to the audience for your active participation. And I'd now like to hand over to my colleague, Sama Ahmed, who is the Regional Manager for North Africa at Invest Northern Ireland, and he'll do some closing remarks. Thanks.
Thank you so much. So my name is Sameh Ahmed. I'm the point of contact of Invest Northern Ireland in North Africa, based in Cairo. So thank you so much, dear panel speakers. So one of the things I find so interesting is listening to people who have first-hand experience and really know what they are talking about. So this session was no exception, as we have listened to our experienced guest speakers who come from different backgrounds. I hope you have found it useful as much as we hoped it would be. I know I'm standing between you and this morning coffee break, so I will be very brief. I would like to focus on a few points. And the first point is that I would like to reiterate that Egypt is one of the promising markets to make business with, despite the current global economic slowdown. It is the largest consumer market in the Middle East and the North Africa region, and one of the fastest growing markets in Africa and the Middle East. I would like also to emphasize that I am ready to work with you towards achieving your goals in Egypt. So if you're interested in the Egyptian market, I'd like to hear from you. I would love to know more about you and your business. And my last point is that I would like to give you my humble advice in order to maintain a successful business, especially nowadays with all the negative news happening around the world and all the uncertainty. So my advice to you is keep positive. So having a positive mindset is so important, as it greatly helps you make the right decision and see opportunities where others don't. So thank you so much for your attendance today, and a big thank you to our guest speakers. Please give them a big round of applause. Yeah, thank you so much. And I've been told that there is feedback surveys on the tables, so if you please can fill them out, that would be appreciated. Thank you so much.